Well, among you in the Free State, you'll have been watching the case involving Nulane Investments. We just saw a report from Aaron Bates about it. It's about the money trail that appears to link contracts in the Free State provincial government with the Guptas. At the moment, the 7 accused are implicated in a contract that saw around 24 million rands worth of government money going to the company Nulane Investments to compile a report. Nulane then used 1.5 million rands worth of that money to pay Deloitte to compile the report. It's what happened to the rest of the money that's so interesting. Michael Marchant is the head of investigations at Open Secrets. Michael, good afternoon. Thanks for your time. This is all about the flow of money. So, money flows out of the Free State provincial government. It goes to Nulane Investments. What happened to it after that?
Afternoon, Stephen, and afternoon to those watching. In many ways, the Nulane Investments case in the Free State is the quintessential example or, phase one of how state capture worked both in the Free State and in the country. And as you say, a crucial part of the state capture story is how the Gupta network, the Gupta family and those around them were ultimately able to benefit from the funds. And so in this case, what happened, much has happened with other state capture funds, is that once the funds were received by Nulane, they were shuffled between a few companies in South Africa. That money was paid to those companies. And from there, and this is really the crucial element, is that that money was then paid to a company called Gateway Limited in the United Arab Emirates. From there, and this is again a typical money laundering technique, it went to a few other entities in the UAE before finally coming back into South Africa to the company called Island Site. And that is where we get to the role of the Gupta family, because we have Atul, Rajesh, Chitali and Arti Gupta as the directors of Island Site. And really it's a reminder about, the requirement for most crimes, as with state capture, is that those who take part in it want to benefit from the proceeds. And so the money eventually has to find its way back to them.
Okay, so money started in the Free State Provincial Agricultural Department and ended up with the Guptas. Right?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. In short, that is exactly what occurred.
And then from there, there's the Freda Dairy Farm, and as I understand it, one thing led to another. So was this, in a way, maybe, was Nulane Investments a sort of test of where the state capture in the Free State could work?
Absolutely. I think it's a great way to describe it. And so what we have is we have really the two phases of any story of state capture, is that you needed to capture the procurement process. And so you needed to fire people in the Free State Provincial Department who didn't want to play along, and you needed to reward those who were willing to turn the other way and sign off on what was clearly an outrageous contract. So what we have in this case, Nulane, we have a company with no employees and no track record being paid 28 million to do a feasibility study on an agricultural project, which it then subcontracted to Deloitte. Clearly outrageous. And then what we have is we have the money from that corrupt contract laundered, as I've described, through South Africa into the UAE and back. Now, if we think forward to Estina, which is the project that eventually arises from this Free State agricultural dairy farm project, we have almost exactly the same modus operandi. We have a company, Estina, run by a computer salesman with absolutely no expertise in agriculture getting the contract. And then that money is, in almost exactly the same way, laundered to the UAE and back to South Africa. In that instance, as much of it used to pay for the now infamous Gupta wedding. And maybe it's also important to state at this point is this is why the NPA's ability to do this Nulane case is of such vital importance. Some people might look at it and say, well, the amount seems relatively small. But as you've said, Stephen, it is in many ways the test case. It was the testing ground for working out how the model of state capture can work in so many ways. And that's why the fact that we're in court, that the trial is proceeding and by all accounts going very well, is really fantastic news and really something that we need to continue to monitor, I think, very closely.
So if the state wins this case, it would probably win others. And even if it doesn't win this case, if it gets conviction for the 7 accused here for 25 million rand, they're probably going to jail for quite a long time anyway.
Absolutely. I mean, my understanding is that there's a minimum sentence of 15 years for the majority of the crimes that the accused are charged with in this regard. And as you say, I mean, I think that there are two elements that come out of this prosecution which are so important. You know, what we and others in civil society have been speaking about for so long is pursue the low-hanging fruit that relates to state capture. The NPA doesn't only need to do the massively complicated trials. It should be prosecuting officials like those in the Free State Department who clearly violated the PFMA. And I think that this is a test case. If the NPA can do it here, we and others can think of at least 100 other cases that they could do within the next year. And they should be pursuing those with urgency. And then, of course, there's the other part of it, which is that there are accused in this case which are implicated and went on to play a role in much larger scale state capture. Iqbal Sharma, one of the central accused here, goes on to play a role, for example, in Transnet state capture in his role on the BAD, the Board and Acquisition Disposal Committee at Transnet. And I think a conviction of him very likely might lead to him reevaluating how much he has to say about those other crimes. And that kind of successful prosecution can thus bear fruit for other state capture cases.
That's a very interesting way that you put it, Michael. The Guptas, we know two members of the Gupta family, Atul Gupta and Rajesh Gupta, are currently in a detention center in Dubai. We're appealing for their extradition here. A conviction here, would that strengthen the case to have them extradited?
I think it certainly would, and I think it's another reason that the MPA is proceeding here with some vigor and also trying to do it as well as they can, because it is going to be absolutely crucial. I think that there remains some unanswered questions about the extradition process. It's gone very silent, and we don't seem to have a huge amount of information in that regard, which I think is concerning. The other thing that remains unanswered in this case is, given that the money laundering network took us through the UAE and back, it is not absolutely clear what information has been obtained about bank statements, for example, in the UAE through mutual legal assistance requests that could be used in this trial and might be very helpful for other trials as well. So I think that there are elements there where we would want the MPA to provide us a bit more information. But absolutely, this case is going to be central, and a successful prosecution would not only strengthen the extradition, but if the extradition then takes place, it should make that trial a lot easier, because the central crime would have already been proven in this case.
Michael Marchand, thank you, Head of Investigations at Open Secrets. Really appreciate the time.